If it was a bad choice, then you say, well, why? What was it I missed in that due diligence that I didn't notice? That something that was going to really cause a problem and I didn't know. Why didn't I notice that?
Yeah.
And then you learn something. So the only thing that's bad when it comes to choices is that you don't learn, not that you make mistakes. That's how we do learn, is by making mistakes. Doing things and seeing how they come out and learning from it. So always do your due diligence. Don't be afraid to say, well, I think this is the best path. Then do it. Just go off and do it. But stay aware of what the repercussions are. What are the consequences? And then learn from it. And as long as you learn from it, it doesn't matter that you made a bad choice. Mm-hmm. You're learning from it. Mm-hmm. And as you grow, your choices will just get better and better and better because you're learning from all the mistakes you make. And eventually, you're old enough to have wisdom because you've learned from a lot of choices, a lot of bad choices.
A lot of bad choices.
Yeah. The bad choices are the good teachers.
Yes, they are.
They're challenging. And if you learn from each one of your choices, then you are going to be a wise, happy person at the end. You can't help but be. If you don't learn from your choices, you'll make the same mistakes over and over and over again because there's some fear in you or something else that pushes you toward that bad choice, and you'll just keep doing it. So due diligence for every choice, and then look back at it and assess, was it a good choice or not? How did it affect other people? How did that come out? And how it affected all the other people as well as you is important. Learn from it and go on. So don't be afraid not to make a choice because you don't know what the right choice is. Just think about it, decide what you think is best, and just go do it and see what happens and learn from it. That's a much more positive way of approaching life. But a lot of people say, well, I can't make a choice because what if that's a bad choice? What if that's a self-centered choice? What if that is, and we stew over it. Don't stew. Take your time, study it, think about it, then just go barge forward into life with your choice and learn.
I think that's a really good point. And I definitely work with a lot of clients who either struggle to make a choice, they get stuck in the over analysis. I work with a lot of men, a lot of left brain men, and they're like, and they will spend too much time in that. Or another thing that I see is people who make a choice that turns out to be suboptimal, and they get that feedback, that expanded awareness from the feedback or the effect of that choice. And then they use that as a reason to beat themselves up or live in regret. Oh, I should have done this. I should have married Sally, but I married Susie. I should have taken this job, but I took that job. And I sometimes work with clients who are ruminating on a decision that they made 25, 30 years ago. Or they turn into, depending on what their pattern is, what their particular entropic pattern is another one, is thinking I'm a bad person because I made X, Y, or Z choice, and then I realized it impacted Bobby and Jimmy. So those are both things that people struggle with. What would you say to those?
Well, the idea that you beat yourself up over the mistakes you made is just silly. It's just non-productive. You make mistakes. Mistakes are really valuable for one thing, and that's to learn. So you don't make the same mistake again. So every mistake you make is a lesson. It's a teacher. It's somebody, it's a situation where you come out of it better. So you see, there's no way to lose. There's a choice. You don't know what to do. You decide to do this, you do it. Now, two things can happen. One is you can make a mistake and learn from it. Then you're better off. Or you don't make a mistake and you're better off. So you see, it's making a mistake is not a problem. Not learning from the mistake you make, that's a problem. But making a mistake is not a problem at all. So you look back and you say, oh man, did I make a really bad choice there? Rather than sitting around feeling sorry for yourself about how you made this bad choice and disliking yourself for making that bad choice, learn from it. Why did I make it? What led me to that? And maybe it was just because you don't have a crystal ball into the future and you just didn't realize what other things were going to happen. And there's no way you could have predicted that. Well, then that's life. Okay, it was a bad choice, but there was no way for you to know any better. No fault. Move on with your life.
Yeah.
So it's you have to learn from your mistakes. But when you make a mistake, that's not oh no, I've made a mistake. It's horrible, poor me, or woe is me. I'm an awful person. It's why did I make the mistake? And you may learn something valuable, or you may find out that, well, it was just life. Stuff happened. There was no way I could have known that it was going to turn out bad like that. I did my due diligence, and it just, all sorts of things happened that I had no idea they would, and it turned out really bad. Well, next time I'll try to maybe look farther into the future, but that's life. Sometimes, you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you. It's just life. You accept that. Sometimes things won't work out. Sometimes you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and, stuff happens. It isn't good. You get a flat tire, you catch a disease, these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
The point is not so much what happens, but how you deal with it. So rather than trying to manipulate the future to be the way you want it, let the future be however it is. And all you have to do is make the best choice you can make and move on and learn from it. Then you will optimize your life, and in 10 or 20 years, you'll be wise. You will have learned a lot, and you will be a much better, more highly grown person. That's those are the two key things. Learn from your mistakes what there is to learn, and revisit them sometimes and say, oh, okay, now I'm smart enough to know how it is I messed that up. So learn from them, but don't feel bad about them. Everybody makes mistakes. Mistakes is how we learn. If everything happens to us and it's always perfect, imagine being in a world where everything just worked out and it was always perfect. You wouldn't learn anything. At the end of that lifetime, you'd be right where you started. You would have no challenges. And it would be boring.
Nobody would want to come here and play.
Right, exactly. So the fact that life is full of challenges is a good thing. Don't wish all the challenges away. It's your opportunity to grow, is by making choices and learning from the poor choices and learning from the good choices. You can learn from what does work and why it works. So those are kind of the key things. Don't try to manipulate the future to be the way you want. All you'll do is create trouble. Yes, you can be intelligent. Okay, I want to go to college because I want to be a brain surgeon. And if you don't go to college, you can't be a brain surgeon. So yes. Yeah, you have to plan things. I don't mean just Pollyanna through life and never plan anything. You have to think ahead and plan things and make intelligent choices. But don't worry about them being the wrong choice if you've done your due diligence. Now, if you don't do due diligence and you just make choices because that's the first thing that came to your mind, then you're not being thoughtful. You're not being caring. You're being arbitrary. And that will not lead to learning.
Yeah. I love that perspective also. And I think what I sometimes say is there's no point in beating yourself up for what you did when you didn't know better. Instead, celebrate you went from here to here. You had this much awareness. Yeah, now you have this much awareness. So some people will say so I made some decisions. They were really self-centered. I've made self-centered decisions that I can look back on in my life and say that was a high entropy decision. But I don't beat myself up about it. I think, I used to be level 2 of a jerk. Now I'm less of a jerk, or now I'm, I think it'd be really helpful for humanity if we learned to reward and celebrate each other when we notice we made a bad choice. so that we can create a more inhospitable environment for the shame that feeds the fear that causes the high entropy choices. So I'll have a client, I call it eating shit sandwiches. I have a client, they'll call me and they'll say, Sandy, you're right. I was bullying the C-suite team at work. I was being really selfish and arrogant, and I was doing this or that. And I'll say, oh, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. I think, you're amazing. You just leveled up, and I'll just assign an arbitrary number of points. I'll say, you just leveled up 15 points in the game. Like, I'm so proud of you. And it's that sort of growth mindset rather than beating ourselves up. Or in society, people I've experienced where I love eating my shit sandwiches or doing shadow work or growing up, becoming more love. And I notice that it can really upset people if I say, oh, I used to be really terrible with money, or, oh, I was really mean to this guy I was in a relationship with. And other people's reaction is often like, oh, that's bad. So then when people make bad choices, they're afraid to look at that part of themselves. They're afraid to look at that because they're afraid of being bad. And that gross feeling of shame we get in our body when we're like, I'm bad. And the whole body goes, ugh. So I think maybe if we all celebrate each other to, create that open environment where we're like, hey, yeah, you did make a very high entropy choice, and you're willing to look at it and you're willing to own it. Did you learn from it? What will you do differently next time? And then giving them love for that rather than judging, blaming, or shaming ourselves or others when we make bad choice. I don't think there is anything that was a really bad choice, but when we make a choice that we later in hindsight realize was maybe more entropic than we prefer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nothing at all valuable about guilt or shame. Those are just a waste of your time and your energy, and will leave you in a worse place, not a better place. So you accept life, accept who you are. Accept that you're not perfect. Accept that you are going to make bad choices, because you don't have a crystal ball that tells you how everything's going to turn out. And you're not going to be that great a guesser. So accept that. That's part of life. That's what life's about. That's the whole point of being here. Learn from your mistakes. So when you make a mistake, say, well, what's the lesson? That didn't turn out well. Why didn't it turn out well? What could I have done better? And make sure that you take responsibility for all your choices. And when you're thinking about, well, why didn't that turn out well? Well, it didn't turn out well because Susie screwed it all up. She did this and she did that, and that's why it didn't work out well. No, that's not what we're talking about here. That's blaming other people for your bad choices. Mm-hmm. You made a choice. Your free will. You made it. Own up to it. You're responsible for the result. Doesn't matter what anybody else does. Your choice. And those other people have to be responsible for their choices and what they did. Mm-hmm. So other people make bad choices, which made your choice turn into a bad choice. Well, there's no penalty in that. That's just life. Things happen. You're not the master of the universe. Other people are out there acting and doing, and it's going to affect you. Mm-hmm. You can't control your life. And as much as you try to control your life and what happens to you, you will cause yourself problems. You will get in your own way. You will make bad choices. You'll trip over yourself. It's much better to just let life unravel the way it does. You do due diligence, make the best choice you can, and then you let the chips fall wherever they fall, and then you learn from it. And sometimes, there's not much of a lesson. It's like, well, I thought I did everything pretty well, but it just didn't work out. Oh, well, life's like that sometimes. Now, let's get going on the next thing. But shame, guilt are dysfunctional. They serve no useful purpose. And if you spend your time in those two things, then you usually make yourself worse, because you'll start to feel bad about yourself. When you feel bad about yourself, your ability to be useful to others goes to zero. It diminishes your ability to be useful to other people if you feel bad about yourself. So, that's just the way life works. It's also, if you have fear, in as much as you have a lot of fear, you have a lesser capacity to love. So if you're really, really full of fear, your capacity to love is maybe only that big. If you are full of love and don't have a lot of fear, well, your capacity to love is that big. So everybody doesn't have the same capacity to love. Everybody has the same potential. Everybody has the potential. But the capacity, you have to earn it. You have to live it. You have to grow to have it. And you do that by getting rid of your fear. So many people are just loving as much as they can. But as much as they can is about that much, because they have fear. The fear creates self-centeredness. The fear creates ego. The fear creates beliefs. And all those things get in the way of making good choices. So life is really very simple. Just do your best, do your due diligence, make your best choices, and go on and learn and have a good time. Laugh, joke, have fun. That's what life is all about. Don't take yourselves too seriously. You're a work in progress, and that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be who you are, and you have to learn. That's all. Being perfect is not a requirement.
No, and it's not helpful. And I think you're right. I think if we could summarize that for people, be kind to yourself, because the kinder you are to yourself when you make mistakes, the kinder you'll be to other people when they make mistakes. And we won't keeping up the shame and guilt and judgment and projection and all of those fear circles. So be kind and be accountable. So you still want to be accountable if you've impacted somebody else negatively with your choice. But just be kind to yourself.